Hi everyone. Thank you everyone for staying right through. Yeah, listening to Andrew, it's pretty hard to not listen. There's so much to learn. He has been at this for a very long time, and I suppose he's one of the ones who's taken a hands-on approach to really having a look at the myths and Facebook messages and Facebook or internet reports on what cannabis can do and how good it is, and yeah, so Andrew's well up with that. But I think what Andrew really leaves you with is that cannabis still is a great product. It still has a wide range of therapeutic effects within the body that help benefit our health and can help alleviate other problems. Yeah, good on you, Andrew, and it's always good because he's always learning more and able to explain it to us in layman's terms, so we do understand. It's been great learning from him for all this time. I suppose my talk today is about what the governments are saying to us at the moment, what we're reading about in the press, and what the media and Current Affair and 730 Report and all these people are. I think I've read for about 100th time in the last couple of years that medical cannabis is legal. It obviously still isn't, and the truth is there still is no legal cannabis products anywhere in the world for Australians to access. We have the Sydney University, we're all aware of the Sydney University that donated $34 million to research cannabis. They have tens of millions of dollars and they still cannot access lawful cannabis to do any research with. And I use the word lawful just to bring you all into the picture. When the government's talking about medical cannabis, it's talking about lawful cannabis as described under the UN drug conventions. Just as we talk about opium under the UN drug conventions or coca. And these are all drugs that are used. So I suppose the simple analogy is if you wanted to grow opium for medical purposes, and opium is a indispensable drug all around the world for medicine, for pain relief. Now, if you wanted to grow opium to help people, like a lot of people are, we'll generally say you have to go to Tasmania and buy the land. What you're not going to be able to do is go down the road to your mate or stop at the side of the road and pick some opium poppies and take the seed and start growing them. That's all going to be illegal. What you're going to need to do, first of all, is go to one of the two companies. They're both foreign companies, GlaxoSmithKline and Johnson & Johnson, and ask for a contract to grow their lawful, legal opium seed that they have proprietary over, that they have full proprietary to, full production and an integrated management approach to the products that they make from that. That's how you're going to grow. And you're also going to sign a non-propagation agreement that you won't save any seed, you won't give any away. It's their seed. Anything that you produce is theirs. You're just growing it for them. In the case of cannabis, of course, so now we're talking about legalising cannabis, so the government has to find a lawful source. And it's the same situation for every government in the world. And I'll briefly explain or try to clarify what's happening in Canada and Israel and those states in the US and how they came to be doing their methods. So the recent talk by the Australian government, and we'll call it the Office of Drug Control, the ODC, that is the new department, the new agency that will be handling the medical cannabis and the changes to the Narcotics Act, the recently released regulations around the if you want to grow cannabis for medical research, and I think on the 30th of this month they'll be releasing the application forms themselves. So when the Australian government is talking about medical cannabis, it's talking about cannabis that is recognised under the UN Drug Convention. And I should just add here, the states, Victoria, Queensland, New South Wales, and what they're talking about, really none of these states can do anything. They really can't do anything without federal approval, and when that federal approval does happen, I can't see that any state's going to run off with it. It hasn't happened anywhere else in the world. I can't see it happening here. Unless there is, big, shift in paradigm, and we are going to go ahead. I can't see any evidence of that. What I do see is that the government has set down some changes in the Narcotics Act, and it has set down a set of regulations around the cultivation, processing and manufacturing of drugs, medical cannabis drugs. So because the government's talking about it, we're talking about, if you want to do that, you've got to have a lawful source of cannabis, and you've got to have the production side of it. So if you're going to turn the cannabis plants that you've grown into a medicine, there's another process of extracting those cannabinoids. So that's another permit, extracting those cannabinoids. And then there's another permit, and the most crucial one is the manufacturer. So you've got to have this whole chain in line, and you've got to have a manufacturer that's, that the government will investigate. You've got to have a contract in place, but that manufacturer has to be capable of and demonstrate that they can take a product from development right through to clinical trials. So whatever we're talking about, we're still talking about developing a product to go through clinical trials to then become a prescribable product. Generally what the government tells us is between 5 and 10 years and about $1 billion. So this hasn't happened anywhere in the world, by the way. So that's what the government's talking about now. At the moment, the government's going to have, they don't really have to do much in the near future, next couple of years. They've done enough now that they're going to be able to fool the public and say that we are doing stuff. We've got hundreds of companies, and we've invited, we have a new government agency, and we've spoken to hundreds of companies. We're encouraging companies to develop medical cannabis products here. At the last meeting a couple of weeks ago up in Brisbane with the CEO of the Office of Drug Control, a guy called Bill Turner. He's what we call now Australia's drug czar. In the way that he explained where Australian companies figured and where companies were viewed in respect of being able to access these regulations, one thing that was pointed out specifically, there is no legal high THC cannabis in Australia. So there'll be no Australian companies that can access any of the billions of dollars worth of cannabis that's flying around Australia. They're not going to legitimise any of that. So you can't have a company get seed that's available or already off the web. You can't use that and go into a medical cannabis program or anything like that. So what the government did say was that they would consider companies from the Netherlands, Israel and Canada. Bearing in mind, and this is just to add a bit more, confusion to it. In those countries' instances, all those governments did bend the rules to let a company or a couple of companies legitimise illicit or illegal cannabis. So Australian government has said they're not going to do that, but we are going to allow, we may entertain allowing these companies from over there. So just when I say that no country, what is a good blanket statement? There's no government in the world that has willingly introduced a meaningful medical cannabis regime. And I'll take you back. The Netherlands, for instance, look, they're a pragmatic country. They're doing coffee shops. They're federal laws, and when they go to the UN, their federal laws say that cannabis is illegal. All that coffee shop business and everything you're seeing there, what the Dutch government says is that they've reprioritised their policing and enforcement, and they find that cannabis is the lowest, it's lower than basically any other job the police can do. And so they've allowed the coffee shops to flourish. But in the meantime, there's still people going to jail for cannabis charges in the Netherlands because there's no permits for people to grow big amounts to supply coffee shops. They call it the backdoor policy, which basically, it is a backdoor policy. The government can't, under UN rules, really allow the production of cannabis for these coffee shops. So that's going on. When medical came up, they allowed a company to develop products to grow cannabis under controlled conditions, indoors, under good manufacturing practices, which is part of like the TGA or any internationally recognised way of growing or producing plants for medical purposes. So, that's quite distinct from home growing and things like that. So the Dutch have allowed that. What's happened in the US, back in 1996, the first of under their constitution, states can, if the citizens of the state want to change laws, they can initiate a referendum. And they're called citizens-initiated referendum. It started back in 1996 in California with Proposition 215. A guy called, it was sort of at the tail end of the first big AIDS epidemics, and you know, in fact that was the last time that there was a little bit of legitimate medical cannabis research, was around the AIDS epidemic, and some of those, some of that research is still some of the only stuff really in the world that was done legitimately with a lawful source of cannabis, full clinical trials, double-blind, placebo. So anyway, in 1996, under the citizens-initiated referendum, parts of the US Constitution, enough signatures were obtained on a petition, and the government had no option but to put the question to the people in a referendum, and they have their voting every 4 years. You know, the next one coming up, California is voting again now on regulating recreational cannabis. So anyway, we go back to California. The important thing to note, the Californian government opposed medical cannabis back then, and every one of those states, every one of those governments in those states where cannabis is freed up, ran no campaigns. They actually got extra money from the federal government to run no campaigns. And it's still illegal. Whatever's going on in those states is protected by the initiatives under the referendums. And you know, so there's been, again, bending of rules and rewriting of laws, and sometimes the feds have to ignore what's going on in those states. One thing that was made clear by the Australian government is that we won't be dealing with any American companies involved in medical cannabis, because none of them are recognised under UN drug conventions and so forth. But really what's happening in those states is that you go to a dispensary, they'll have a doctor, sometimes at best, a doctor on a Skype computer, and he, you know, for $150, he's going to give you a thing, a certificate to say you can go and buy cannabis or you can grow some. There's no quality control. All those dispensaries that you go and buy from, they're not allowed to use the banking system because of the federal regulations. These are illegal activities going on. There's no health and safety around the cannabis that's being distributed and dispensed through these dispensaries. They're not allowed to get it tested. You can't take this illegal cannabis to a federally recognised, federally approved laboratory. It's illegal. Same thing going on in Canada. In Canada they have a Bill of Rights, a Charter of Rights put in place, I think in the 70s by Pierre Trudeau, and it gives a bit more authority to the people than above the government. And what happened back in 2002, well 2002 was the end of a series of court cases with two different defendants who were caught by police using cannabis for medical purposes. They ran through all the court cases, went right to the High Court. And the High Court found that yes, these people should be able to use cannabis. And because the judgment went that way, the High Court had the authority and the power to order the Canadian government to initiate a medical cannabis regime. They were given a year, they took 2 years, and what they did come up with was half-assed, it didn't really work, and they had to change rules again, allow people to grow at home, and dispensaries popped up because, you know, most people couldn't grow at home. And so it's gone from there, and it's important to note that since then the federal government in Canada has run 10 High Court challenges against various aspects of this medical cannabis regime that they themselves had to put in place. But all the time, always trying to hold people back from what the people were doing. I was in Canada last year, and there was the 9th High Court decision that went against the government, because in the original ruling by the High Court, it just said, you know, get a medical cannabis regime together, so they held it at that. This last High Court ruling last year said that the government didn't want people to manufacture from the cannabis. You know, they said, all right, well, if the court says you can have cannabis, you can smoke it and that's it. What the court found last year was that if there's safer ways of using cannabis, if you can extract the cannabinoids from, bearing in mind that the green vegetable matter of cannabis is useless, it's not necessary, it's really the little the resin glands that grow on the outside of the plant, and for thousands of years, whether hash was made or you know, those resin glands were dissolved off in alcohol and suspended. At the end of the day, all the green vegetable matter was thrown away. There's nothing in it. So what the courts found was, if there's safer ways of using cannabis other than smoking it, you should be able to do it and allow extractions to be legal, and people to, you know, get those extractions and use them in more, you know, in edibles and things like that, or just using what you need to use rather than the green vegetable matter. And it was, I mean, I got there, and the Health Minister of Canada, Rona Ambrose, there was a clip they kept playing on the TV of her saying that the government was outraged at this last High Court decision, and the government was still outraged at the previous 2002 decision, and that they would continue to fight that tooth and nail, and that marijuana is not medicine, courts can't decide what medicines are. And this woman was, she had red hair, but it was even more red. She turned red. And you know what? She was just representing. She's representing someone. She obviously wasn't representing the people. Sounded like she's obviously representing pharmaceutical companies who sort of are working under the legal framework that keeps, you know, cannabis out of the picture. I'll just go back a bit too. We talked about the UN drug conventions too, and something that we'll touch on because there's been recent developments about that. So under the UN drug conventions, they really pertain to, especially the original drafts, really related to coca, opium, and hashish or cannabis. So when they did put the laws in place, the UN drug conventions, this was for the even distributions of drugs, medical drugs around the world. There was about 8 companies that got opium and 2 companies that got the coca. And what we can really, the only thing we can really find is that 1 company did get cannabis. So there has been a lawful source of cannabis for medical and scientific research available to countries all around the world, as described under the UN Drug Convention. The problem was the company that owned it, Monsanto, has only, it's grown every other year at the University of Mississippi, and it's distributed by a US agency called NIDA, the National Institute of Drug Abuse. And we have quotes from them where they've been taken to court by research groups trying to get lawful cannabis. So, you know, this is research groups with ethics approval to commence, you know, research, and they can't get anything. They've taken NIDA to court, and NIDA has said several times, we've only been supplying cannabis for research into the negative consequences of its use. We don't supply, and so that's the basis of the propaganda for the past, you know, 40 or 50 years. What's recently has happened, and people should check this out because this story is just coming out now. Another company called Bayer has purchased Monsanto and also DuPont, and there's about 6 companies. Should suggest, you know, at the very top level, something to really, you know, for some people this might answer why governments here around the world aren't moving on this. You know, this has got some merit to it. So Bayer has bought these other companies, including Monsanto. And just to close a bit of a loop here, Bayer has been involved in medical cannabis. They're in another country too, England, GW Pharmaceuticals. We've all heard of the product Sativex, the spray product. It's been around for about 15 years and it's been promised to many countries and many, even by our governments. And the new product, Epidiolex, which is the high CBD product that's being trialled for paediatric epilepsy. And this is the one that our government here in Australia, various state governments, and it's not just here. As I say, it's a worldwide problem, and there's people in halls around the world, I guarantee it, talking about how to get medical cannabis up in their countries, and including even in the United Kingdom, where there is this red herring. GW Pharmaceuticals. Here we've got a company that, of all the countries in the world, the British government allowed this company to access illicit cannabis seed to start a program to develop a product from whole cannabis extract for the treatment of multiple sclerosis. This happened, you know, quite a while ago. It was a public company, it was floated, you know, fully, you know, sold all its shares really easily. But Bayer, back in the early days, I'd say the early 2000s, Bayer stepped in at one point and paid £15 million for the distribution rights of Sativex into Oceania. There's a piddly amount of money, and they never intended to distribute Sativex to Oceania, Australia, or anywhere. But in the meantime, it was Bayer that has been funding the Epidiolex trial in the US. This is a paediatric epilepsy. This is the trial that, for instance, here in New South Wales, Premier Baird is saying that they've signed a big $3.1 million deal to get 40 children onto a trial, a pre-existing trial. That's that trial in the US. So we'd be, if everything goes well, we might be able to get 40 children into the second phase of that trial. But Bayer has been funding this. So, you know, you've got this big company now that does own the only lawful source and the other red herring product. And again, you know, we've got all this time and money. I mean, we're talking a decade and a half now, which has culminated, and I really don't want to take this away from the children, but this is all about trying to get this one product for Dravet syndrome, which is, you know, a very small patient base. And, you know, if we have to start lining up other conditions that, you know, that we need, you know, cannabinoids and cannabis products developed for, you know, we're talking, you know, decades and decades before we start getting down to other conditions. So what I'm saying is basically what the government now is announcing is another series of stall tactics, of harsh regulations, that can't be fulfilled, especially here in Australia, haven't been fulfilled anywhere around the world. And they're, you know, quite right, they're going to be able to say that they're working very hard. They are doing what they can, and but what we're not hearing is the actual, what they've been described as international obstacles and roadblocks. You know, we've had a couple of parliamentary inquiries here in Australia, state ones in Victoria, in New South Wales, and probably the big one, which was the most interesting one for me, when the Greens proposed the regulator bill, and there was an in-built inquiry in that. It was a, you know, bipartisan committee, all apparently very well in favour of medical cannabis, but as the witnesses came through and you read, I've read the transcripts and you read the evidence they were giving, especially the TGA. I mean, the TGA just laid it all out. We're not a government department. We're paid for by big pharmaceutical companies who apply at $220,000 an application fee. You know, so we don't have time to make cannabis legal because we don't do that. You know, a company has to make a cannabis product, bring it to us, give us $220,000, and we'll do our own safety checks and check up on the safety on clinical trials that this company's already done to get to that point. So, but what was interesting in the final report of that parliamentary inquiry, you know, tucked away in you know, small writing in paragraphs, is these international obstacles. There is no lawful source of cannabis obtainable. It is it's very, very difficult. So so I think, you know, putting my other hat on with the hemp embassy and the hemp party and you know, as a patient advocate, I think what we should be talking about is interim measures. So, you know, if the governments really want to go along this route of like any other new drug, you know, 10 to 15 years, or 5 to 10 years with lots and lots of money, millions and millions of dollars to get a product up to preclinical, clinical trial stage. Meantime, you've got, you know, 1 million people suffering. We've got 100,000 people probably using cannabis every day in Australia for medical purposes. We need interim measures, and these are quite complex measures that the government, I think, you know, we should be putting to them. You know, there can be 5, 10, 15 or 20 years, that these measures would be complex, it'd be very difficult to explain, but they certainly would address the concerns and the needs of these people right now who need cannabis, of children right now who need cannabis, of thousands of people every week who are going through chemo and other, you know, normal medical procedures that cannabis could help with, alleviate side effects of. And I think, you know, if we have to wait for each and every one of these conditions to be explored and products developed for, and billions and billions of dollars to be expended on before, none of us are going to be around. It's a worldwide thing, and I think, you know, as we do move forward and lobbying and talking to other people about it, we really should be directing our concerns to our state health ministers and our premiers, to be pushing the federal health minister and Malcolm Turnbull, the Prime Minister. Howard commented on medical cannabis being available in a spray or a pill 20 years ago when Sativex was just talked about. Sativex, this English product, has been great for governments around the world. In New South Wales, I think we've had 2, 3 or 4 trials proposed. When the citizens got up calling for medical cannabis, the fallback position will start a Sativex trial, yeah, and it'll be fine. And they never eventuated. You know, people who have bought Sativex in, it's a 5.5ml bottle for $220, and you've got to buy a month's worth. So it's about $1,000 for 22 mils. I mean, this stuff should be $1 a mil. It's that cheap. At $1 a gram, cannabis is $1 million a tonne. There's no other product like it, and that's at $1. And you know, another interesting thing, you know, cannabis kind of is its own worst enemy. So even if we were to fully legalise cannabis, we done some maths on it a while ago, and we reckon we could grow all of Australia's medical cannabis needs on 3 acres. The government, the federal government, has had a look at that, and they doubled it. They said 3 hectares, all of Australia's need. GW Pharmaceuticals, who is this only company in the world that's been allowed to grow cannabis ostensibly legally and for distribution around the world, they believe they could grow the whole world's needs on 10 hectares. That's how it's all. You know, it actually works against. So it's not going to be, if medical cannabis does get up, there's not going to be, you know, acres and acres of it. It's going to, if it's for medical purposes, it will be grown indoors. It will be controlled. It will be high quality control and consistency applied to it. A lot more than opium. And again, you know, I'm talking about these things that the government are saying in their regulations. They're making them up because, you know, there is no real rules. The rules on medical cannabis are quite strict under the UN Drug Convention. There is a lawful supply, and they do grow it indoors, and it is all processed and done hygienically and under supervision, under good manufacturing processes. You know, it is going to be hard, and it's going to be interesting in the future how the government explains to the people how we're moving forward. But in the meantime, you know, there really isn't any movement. And whatever little gains are made, especially for the children who you know, look likely they'll be going on to, you know, a small handful going on to clinical trials, I think it's great. Then we've got to also acknowledge that police are turning a blind eye to a lot of medical cannabis supply that's going on around the country. A cursory look on the internet will find you 100 different suppliers in Australia alone, and if you want to buy from the US, they have no hesitation of taking your money in, and they'll send it to you. If it makes it to you, that's good. For a lot of people, it will make it to them. From Europe, I'm hearing, you know, big shipments. So there's, you know, there could be anything up to, I'd say there's, I mean, if there's over 100 on the web, I'd say there's, you know, 1,000 suppliers around Australia. The important thing to note, and especially we should be telling the government, medical cannabis is happening in Australia. It's not going to, it's happening right now. It's up to the government now to catch up and put together some interim measures. We'd love it if they came and speak to us here in Nimbin, to people like Andrew. These are complex things. We won't be able to discuss it in 5 minutes, you know. It'll be a 2-week, you know, discussion with a half a dozen policymakers and bureaucrats to devise interim measures and still pliable enough to be tinkered with over the next, you know, year as the years went on. But yeah, medical cannabis is happening. It's all happening illicitly. Here in New South Wales, police have been given discretion on these types of things, which is just, you know, a bad situation made worse. Here in New South Wales, people don't like hearings, but we've had royal commissions into the conduct and corruption in our police force here. There is corruption, and you know, Mulholland inquiry and more recently the Woods Royal Commission specifically mentioned not giving police discretion around gambling, prostitution, drugs, things like that. And here we go giving them. If I was a cop and you find a big room, and a guy says, well, it's medical and here's a few $1,000. I mean, it's as simple as that. It goes from there, and and it's probably not medical. If it's a big black market operation growing hydroponic, it's probably not the best suited for treating problems and issues like that. Medical cannabis, most medical cannabis in the world, nearly all of it now, when we look at the US and Canada and it's indoor. It's going to be hydroponic, it's indoor basically. They're growing it in dirt, it's not in floating in hydro solutions. All the hydroponic, I mean, it is a consequence of prohibition. It's like moonshine, when you couldn't get out a civilised scotch or a low alcohol beer, but you get moonshine everywhere. There's similarities between that and the method of growing hydroponic cannabis, where it's being pushed indoors. People are trying, they can make millions. Australians spend about $5 billion a year. The question is whether Australians smoking half a tonne a day or a tonne a day, or using that much cannabis per day. So, anyway, I could probably go on about it more and more. I hope I haven't confused too many people, but the important thing to note is that, the government is saying a lot, but not much is happening. They've been saying a lot. If you go right back to, you can chase it back. Right through to the 70s when there was earlier calls for medical cannabis and governments needed a scapegoat. Well, back then they'd say, well, we've got synthetic cannabis, we've got marijuana. And you have a look, there was clinical trials, recognised clinical trials done using synthetic cannabis, delta-9, the single molecule, THC delta-9. Which is claimed to be, the tricky one, the one that has all the magic in it. Obviously, a synthetic like that, a single molecule that mimics delta-9, isn't really going to work in a way that whole cannabis extracts or smoking or using all of those cannabinoids, the delta, THC, delta-1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, there's 10 of them, and then you've got CBD, CBG, CBN, and a whole row. I mean, we're up to about 106 that are recognised now. So, using a whole cannabis extract as opposed to one single molecule, that was, back in the 70s, that was an easy way to get the citizens off and the sick people off the government's back. As time went on, yes, then NIDA did start, producing cigarettes, joints made from the cannabis that I was saying was grown. And they're still available. More recently, the Victorian government got some into, just like that. They got medical cannabis into Australia and they got people to smoke it and do driver simulation testing, and found that cannabis was the worst thing to be driving on, and that ushered in the saliva testing, which again we're the only country doing that. I should just say now. Again, you're going from one situation which is bad to worse to repugnant. We've got these saliva testing devices in, it's holding back industrial hemp seed food. Police, don't worry, they're in the background at the moment trying to stop this medical cannabis debate, because they know if this goes forward, it's going to interfere with saliva testing. It's important to note saliva testing doesn't check for opiates, benzos, depressants, and a lot of other stimulants and synthetic cannabis, and a lot of other things that do affect driving. So, we're in a mess of trouble, and unstitching it's going to be hard. But more importantly, if people are going to talk about cannabis and where the obstacles are, and just be aware, there are obstacles there. It's at an international level, and if we're going to direct our focus, it should be, to our state health ministers, to be directing it to our federal health minister and Malcolm Turnbull. I hope that's enough. Yeah, I can take questions. I'll hang around. I hope I can help. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tick scheme.
And you have a terminal illness.
Yeah.
They would allow you to have a certain amount.
14 grams.
Is that worthwhile having?
It's a tricky one. I mean, here you've got a government that set up a whole regime, tick scheme, terminal illness cannabis access scheme. They set up a whole scheme relying on the black market to supply it. If you First of all, you've got to get your doctor to certify that you are terminal. And doctors have been warned before this scheme came out. There was consultation done. Doctors were warned, if you certify that your patient is terminal, they better be dead in 12 months. These permits, this exemption is only for 12 months. Now, it doesn't exempt, you can't grow it. You can't have anyone grow it for you. You can only access 14 grams at a time from the black market. And it's not to be used as a defence for driving. So, you know, in some circumstances that might be helpful, but not for most people, no, not at all. And it's just, you know, an indictment on the government, you know, that's set up a scheme that, you know, in its mind fulfills, you know, federal regulations, fulfills the United Nations drug conventions, but relies on the black market to supply it. Yeah.
I think I heard a theory that if cannabis is allowed, that it would impact the sales on opium and coca from the existing companies.
Again, I got visited once by GlaxoSmithKline. They came to Nimbin once, and it was after I'd grown some cannabis under permit and done some research. They reckon cannabis could influence worldwide pharmaceutical sales or pharmaceutical industries up to 5%, which to us is nothing. To them, he said that would be catastrophic. 5%. Yeah. And when you have a look at the whole medical and industrial, the whole, you know, medical empires in that around the world, it's not just, you know, a drug. We were talking X-ray machines, MRIs, hospitals, lots of other drugs. You know, and yeah, cannabis could affect 5%, but they reckon that would be catastrophic. Yeah. But you know, we're seeing some of the changes now in some of those states where cannabis has been lined up in the US and even in Canada. We are seeing changes in prescription drugs. Absolutely, there is changes there, and it could be in line. You know, probably less at the moment because even the way that, you know, in Canada and the US, the way that those regimes are running, most of the people who would find benefit from the use of cannabis are still probably not interested or not using it. You know, most people want to go to a doctor, get a prescription, go to a chemist and get their drug. At the moment, you know, even with what we're seeing now, billions of dollars worth in legal cannabis, tip of the iceberg, absolute tip of the iceberg. Yeah. Hi.
I might be asking the wrong Andrew, but you mentioned a drug that was being used for treatment of multiple sclerosis. So
Sativex, the spray.
Yeah, so is cannabis effective in the treatment of multiple sclerosis?
It slows the progression of the symptoms. Okay, it doesn't claim to cure it, but it will slow it. Yeah, yeah. And it's quite effective, yes, in adults and so forth, yeah. And, you know, and I find that was interesting as well, when a company was given free rein to develop a product, they just showed us a whole other route of administration, the spray. And we got educated about the different mechanisms. You know, there's glands in our mouth, in our cheeks, that instantly will take fat-soluble products like cannabinoids straight into the bloodstream and get them to work instantly, you know, within seconds. You know, they could have made a tincture, they could have made a pill, they could have made, you know, something else, but they chose to make a spray. And not really meant for swallowing, just meant to spray in your mouth. There's enough buccal glands in the cheeks and around and under the tongue that you know, will do the job. And the particle size of the spray, you know, does give that effect, and that's been quite interesting. But then also how people, mainstream, you know, Facebook, internet have then changed that to, you know, putting, you know, drops under your tongue, and it's not really the same. It's not the same effect. It's not the same mechanism. Whereas one's going into the bloodstream through the buccal glands, under the tongue generally means digesting it. And when our body digests cannabis, it does it in a whole different way. You know, briefly, when you're eating cannabis, whether it's a cookie or something that's not the raw cannabis, but it's been prepared or suspended in a butter and made into a cookie, or suspended in alcohol and used as a tincture, when we swallow it, our body excretes about 90% of the cannabinoids that we ingest, but those other 10% that do make it in through the digestive stream into the blood and to the liver then get turned into a 11-hydroxy, I forget what it is now, but it's a number 11. It's this other thing, but that's quite effective. It's about 7 times stronger than the cannabinoids or whatever that went in, Delta 9, when that's what was looked at when they did that kind of research. And this kind of research was proper scientific. There is enough out there for us to know that they know a lot more. There is medical benefits to cannabis. Our bodies are made to take cannabis, made to use it. Our biomechanisms, our pharmacokinetics, from the very time we were born, I think it was touched on last night, there could have been humans and cannabis could have evolved very well together when you have a look at our systems and how it affects us. And the same with coca and these other products that, they were shipped around the world. When people first started walking, that's what they moved around. It was interesting reading up more way back, the silk routes. When you realise, no, these silk routes, they weren't actually about bolts of fabric. This was about medicines. Coca and opium was more important. And with cannabis, turning cannabis into hashish and getting rid of the green vegetable matter, silk was indispensable. The resin glands are just small enough to go through silk, but not allow any green vegetable matter to go. And that powder that goes through the silk is then compressed and you have a medicine. That was the hashish, and that was then carted around the world as a smaller product mixed with alcohol and delivered to people. That's cannabis is very old, and its interaction with humans is a long, very old thing as well. Thanks for everyone for coming, and tell your friends. And we do these quite often, and thank you. And we have the Hemp Embassy there. People, should refer people. There's more information can be gathered at the Hemp Embassy 7 days a week by a group of dedicated volunteers. Michael is there all the time. We should let's hear a big round for Michael. You wouldn't believe how much he does all the time. Seriously, 7 days a week. Keeps all this together. There's a few dozen volunteers that help and make the embassy run full time all day, 7 days a week. And so Michael's been keeping all that together for a long time now, and so special thanks to Michael. Refer people to the Hemp Embassy when you can, and keep an eye out for these and recommend these seminars that we do put on. They're quite good, and so thank you.
A couple of announcements. So you can see a lot of these previous workshops on a YouTube channel called Hemposium. If you Google Hemposium YouTube channel, you'll see a lot of talks. Quite a lot of Dr. Andrew Catalaris' and other talks. Someone's looking for a ride back to Byron. Don't know if anyone can help with that. Anyone have any ideas?
I can go to Mullum.
That's not bad. Is he here? God, you don't know. Alright, he might be far away. What else did I have to tell Chibo? Wadsy wants to announce a co-op he's trying to get together, although the permits are going to be, it's doable. It's doable. He Andrew said it's
I told the guy, with enough more paperwork. Alright.
Second, I've got 2 more things happening now. We're going to give you a demonstration on making medicine. But first, I've got Nell Jones from the local Happy High Herb shop. Going to talk. She's a healer from a tradition of healers, going to talk. And then I've got other locals, Heather and Radical and Francis. They're all going to come up here. Heather will sing you a song. Al is going to make some medicine, and Francis will tell you about her healing. So that's after Nell. So hang around.
Yeah, there's still tea, hang around, there's still coffee, tea, cake, good conversation, and meet a local, they won't even get you high.
And I know the other thing I want to say. Now, if anyone hasn't got what they came here for today, come and see me, and I can help connect you. Otherwise, here's Wadsy. There's another industrial hemp grower.
Yeah, look, just very quickly, I said earlier about cannabis co-op. I think the only way that people are going to really get into the industry here and have a say in it is for us all to get together and be a force, because by ourselves we're just going to knock you off one by one. There's a lot of people growing or in different industrial, medical and food cannabis. You're involved in the industry. And the other thing is grow your own. If everyone grows their own couple of plants and make your own medicine, you get this out there. Very easy to get seeds, just go online. You'll get CBD, THC, anything you bloody want. Lights are available. If you look at the hemp embassy, there's a great little light in the front window there. We're growing your own. If you can't grow it outside, all you need is a pot, some good organic potting mix, and that's in the hemp embassy as well. You can just get all the hemp embassy actually, if you want to grow your own, apart from the seeds maybe, but yeah, you get them online pretty easy. So grow your own, make your own medicine. Magic butter machine makes really good medicine, I think, probably as good as anything else you get now. Simple, you don't need alcohol or all those fancy gadgets that you buy, $200, $258 on it now, some olive oil, a few other little extracts, and you can go on there, same thing, have a little magic butter machine, there's set recipes there for all sorts of things, so yeah, make your own.
It is what terrifies them, that this is a plant you can grow in your backyard as easily as parsley. It's that easy. And that's terrifying for the pharmaceutical industry, because it will take a lot of business away from them.